Welcome to the Career Intelligence Podcast, where we explore how work is changing and how people can navigate their careers in a world shaped by AI, technology, and rapid workplace transformation. I'm your host, Meredith Dinitz, career coach and founder of Your Career Happiness Professional Coaching. There's a term that has been popping up a lot lately called career cushioning. When I first heard it, I thought, okay, another workplace buzzword. But the more I thought about it, the more I realized a lot of people are already doing this without even realizing there's a name for it. Sometimes it looks like quietly updating your LinkedIn, keeping an eye on the market even though you're not seriously looking, networking just in case, or staying in a role while also wondering what else might be out there. And I think the fact that so many people are doing this says a lot about the moment we're in and how people are feeling about work, stability, and career security in general. So today, I want to unpack that a little, both from my years in recruiting and from what I see every day in my coaching work. Now let's get started. So what actually is career cushioning? Basically, it's building a quiet backup plan while you're still employed. Now, this isn't the same as actively job searching. It's way more subtle than that. It might look like scrolling through job postings during your lunch break, and not because you're ready to apply, you just want to see what's out there. Or updating your LinkedIn profile, even though you have no immediate plans to make a move. Maybe saving a role that catches your eye, even though you aren't actually sure you want it. Sound familiar? What's interesting is that researchers are finding this is happening across the board right now, and not just with people who are unhappy. Even professionals who feel pretty settled are doing this. And I think that tells us a lot about the moment we're living in. You may have also heard the term job hugging lately, which is when people stay in roles longer because leaving feels too risky right now. I actually think the two often go hand in hand. People are staying put, but they're also quietly keeping options open in the background. And having spent 14 years in agency recruiting before I moved into coaching, I can tell you this behavior is not new. What is different now is how widespread and normalized it has become. In the past, someone quietly updating their resume felt like a red flag. Now it feels less like a red flag and more like people trying to stay prepared. And I think that shift is worth paying attention to. So, why is this such a thing right now? I think a few things are happening at once. Over the past few years, we have seen layoffs across pretty much every industry. AI is reshaping roles faster than most people can keep up with. And look, I'm not going to go deep on AI today because that deserves its own conversation. Jeremy, a former guest, touched on it from the job search angle, and Justin from the workplace conversation angle. If you haven't listened to either of those episodes, they're definitely worth a listen. But what I will say is that the uncertainty AI is creating in the workplace is very real, and it's one of the biggest reasons people are trying to keep their options open right now. There's also this growing feeling, and I hear this from clients all the time, that doing good work and being loyal to your company doesn't protect you the way it used to. I think people view work and job security very differently now. And I've watched that mindset change a lot over the years. Psychologically, it makes a lot of sense. When things feel unstable, our brains naturally start looking for ways to protect us. And when work feels uncertain, career cushioning becomes a way to feel a little more prepared and in control. For a lot of people, it's not even the workload. Well, maybe a little. But more than anything, it's the ambiguity, not knowing what's coming, not knowing if their role is going to look the same in a year. And career cushioning is the brain trying to do something about that feeling. But here's what I think gets missed sometimes. Done intentionally, career cushioning can actually be really smart. Think about it this way: keeping your network warm and your LinkedIn current means you're never starting from zero if something unexpected happens. That's just smart career management, plain and simple. Knowing what's out there in the market gives you real data on what you're worth. And when you know your market value, you show up differently in your current role. You negotiate better and you advocate for yourself with more confidence. That matters. I saw this all the time when I was recruiting. I would come across a LinkedIn profile that really caught my eye, someone with the exact background I was looking for. I would reach out, we would have a great conversation, and I would get really excited about them. We would go through the whole comp and benefits discussion. And then at the end of the call, they would say something like, actually, I'm really happy where I am right now. I just wanted to get a sense of what I was worth in the market. They weren't desperate, they were informed. They knew their value, and they weren't waiting until they needed to know it. Now, as a recruiter, I will be honest, those conversations could be quite frustrating because I was investing time in a process that might actually not go anywhere. But at the same time, I understood why people were doing it. Over time, I realized a lot of people were not looking to escape, they were looking for perspective. That is exactly what intentional career cushioning looks like in practice. This actually reminds me of something Justin Hale from Crucial Learning said in a recent episode that connects perfectly here. He spoke about a woman he knew who made a habit of checking in on the market every year or so, and not because she was unhappy. She just wanted to get a sense of what was out there and how her salary stacked up. And Justin's point was that it's smart preparation, because when you eventually need to have a real conversation with your manager about where you stand or where you want to go, you're not walking in with a gut feeling. You're walking in with real data. That's why staying connected to the market can be so valuable. It keeps you informed, it keeps you grounded in your own value, and it means you're never negotiating blind. And here's something I say to clients all the time: the best time to look for a job is when you don't have to. When you're not desperate, you make better decisions. You have leverage, and you're not accepting the first thing that comes along just because you need something. Career cushioning, when it's intentional, puts you in that position. I lived a version of this myself, if I'm being honest. When I started feeling like I hit my ceiling in recruiting, I definitely went through a period of asking myself, okay, what else can I realistically do with my skills? What I did know was that I loved working with people, and I loved the parts of recruiting where I was helping people figure out what was next, preparing for interviews, and thinking through career decisions. At the time, I didn't know much about career coaching, so I started doing some cold outreach to coaches whose work resonated with me. I had some really great conversations with people who were kind with their time and introduced me to others. Eventually, I found a coaching program that helped me start on my path. I was very open with my boss that I was ready for something new, but I stayed in recruiting for a while as I started exploring coaching and figuring out whether it was something I really wanted to pursue. That in between period was uncomfortable. And honestly, that in between period was uncomfortable at times. Part of me knew I was ready for something different, but another part of me was terrified to walk away from something I had spent years building and being successful. Eventually, I got to the point where I knew that if I was serious about making a move, I had to fully commit to it. So I did. And honestly, I love what I do now. That whole period of exploration before I made the leap, that was career cushioning. I just didn't have a name for it at the time. And look, there is another side to this. Career cushioning can go from empowering to exhausting, and the line between the two is worth knowing. If you're spending more time and energy on your backup plan than on doing great work where you are right now, that's a problem. Not because loyalty demands it, but because it's hard to move forward when your head is constantly somewhere else. If every headline about layoffs or AI sends you down a rabbit hole of job searching that never actually goes anywhere, that's not preparation. That is fear taking over. And if you've been career cushioning for months or even years, updating your resume, saving jobs, doing the networking, but never actually making a move or getting any clearer on what you want, I want to gently offer this. The cushioning might be a way of feeling like you're doing something without having to face the harder question underneath it all. And sometimes there are very real reasons people stay in that in between space for a while: financial pressures, burnout, uncertainty about what comes next. I am not minimizing that. But at some point, you still have to ask yourself, what do I actually want next? And I think a lot of people avoid that question because once you really answer it, you may realize something actually needs to change. And look, I say this with a lot of compassion because I see it all the time. It is a really hard question, but it's the one that matters most. And the difference between strategic career cushioning and anxiety-driven career cushioning really comes down to one thing. Are you doing this from a place of curiosity and preparation or from a place of fear? Because those two things can look almost identical on the outside, but they lead to very different places. So if you are career cushioning right now, or if you recognized yourself in any of this, here's what I would actually suggest. First, give it a time and a place. Set aside one dedicated block of time each week for career development. Use that time intentionally and then close the tabs the rest of the time. Because when it's running as a constant background noise, it stops being strategy and starts being stressed. Second, get clear before you start scrolling. What are you actually looking for? Is it more money, more meaning, more flexibility, a completely different direction? Because without that clarity, you're just browsing. And browsing without a compass tends to create more confusion, not less. Third, use this time to invest in your visibility, regardless of what you decide. Update your LinkedIn. Reach back out to people you've lost touch with, and not because you need something right now, but because relationships matter and they take time to build. Write that post you've been putting off. These things have value no matter what you decide to do next. And finally, get curious about what is underneath the cushioning. What is the fear that's driving it? Is it a fear of being blindsided? A feeling that your role is becoming less relevant? A sense that you've outgrown where you are, but you have no idea what comes next? Because naming that is usually where the real clarity starts. And that's the work I love doing with clients. One thing I want my clients to understand before things start feeling overwhelming is this: the discomfort you're feeling is not a sign that something's wrong with you. It's actually a sign that you're paying attention, that you care about your career, that you've not checked out. The professionals I worry about are not the ones who are quietly exploring their options. They're the ones who have stopped caring altogether. So if you're feeling that pull, that nagging feeling, that quiet wondering about what else might be out there, listen to it. Just do it with intention rather than anxiety, because there is a real difference between preparing for what is next and hiding from the question of what you actually want. And that's really what this whole conversation comes down to. Not whether you should be career cushioning, but whether you're doing it in a way that is actually moving you forward.
Here's the bottom line. Career cushioning is not a problem to solve. It is your instincts trying to tell you something about where you are and what you might need next. And that is worth paying attention to. The question is not whether to stop doing it. The question is whether you're going to let it sit as background noise or use it to get more intentional about what comes next. If today's conversation felt familiar to you, this is exactly the kind of work I do with my clients. I work with mid-career professionals who are successful on paper but are starting to question what's next, whether that's navigating a job search, going after a promotion, or simply getting clear on what they really want. You can learn more about working with me at yourcareerhappinesspc.com or connect with me on LinkedIn. And if this episode resonated with you, be sure to follow the Career Intelligence Podcast and share it with someone who might need to hear it. Maybe someone who has been quietly career cushioning and is not quite sure what to do with that feeling. Thanks so much for listening. We will be back next week with another episode. In the meantime, stay curious, keep learning, and keep building your career intelligence.
Forward.